Okay, so this is a short PowerPoint presentation. Um, Contemporary art practice has the two programs within it, fine art and art and philosophy. Now, normally in a year group, there's somewhere between about 80 up to 100 students in a year group. But the vast majority of those tend to be fine art students. In art and philosophy, there's usually up to about 20 students in a year group. And it's partly because we can't really accommodate more than that because we produce this program in collaboration with the School of Humanities, and obviously they have their own philosophy students. There are English students as well, in English literature and history students, some of whom take philosophy too. So that's our sort of allocated amount that we can accommodate. So it's quite a specialized course. I'll move on to the next slide. The fine art and philosophy students share the same studios modules, so it wouldn't matter which of the two pathways that you chose. Your experience within the art school and the art studios would be pretty much the same. You work with the same group of tutors. You're working with the same module briefs at level 2. By level 3, you're working self-directed and coming up with your own sort of themes that you're exploring, and you're supported with personal tutors or academic advisors, as we call them. The difference being that fine art students study critical and contextual studies, which used to be called art history, and art and philosophy students study philosophy. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we go on. But first of all, I just wanted to show you examples of studios throughout the building. So this is a level 4 studio, and this is a student who, a few years ago this is, but is preparing for degree shows, so there's quite a clutter at this point. That very first slide that I showed you actually was her installation. You can see the fake grass there, and in her space you can see some of the models and so on that she was producing. So that's one space. Different people do different things. I think this is a level 2 studio space. They're not quite so generous. The higher up the school you go, the more generous your space becomes. And that's because projects tend to be more ambitious. At level 2, we are looking to acquire skills and to begin to contextualize your practice. But it's really quite skills-based at level 2, so you'll be involved in quite a lot of workshops. We encourage you to explore territories that you're not familiar with. You know, if you've come here mainly doing drawing and painting, for example, you might think about making a film or producing an installation piece and so on. So it's to expose you to different ways of working and to just get you out of your comfort zone a bit. So here's another studio. I think this is a level 3 studio, as far as I can remember. And as you can see, there are different things going on within each studio. We don't have strict discipline boundaries like a school of painting and a school of sculpture and so on. You are free to do any kind of art production that you are interested in, and we will support you with staff, with members of staff who are experts within that area. So you get the kind of tutorial support you need, and it's very much student focused, and you can weave through different disciplines, you can combine different disciplines. That's entirely up to you. This is a level 2 intense drawing workshop with one of my colleagues, Kate MacLeod, leading this one. So over a period of 3 or 4 days, there might be this, the whole studio is cleared out, and students are given a brief, and they're encouraged to work on ambitious drawings. So that's just one example. We also have, from time to time, every year we have visiting lecturers, and this is, I can't remember his name, I think it's Mark. Oh, I can't remember, sorry, I've forgotten his name, but he's a sound specialist. So for people who are interested in sound as a way of producing their artwork, This is a really vital kind of session that you can have, and it comes every year, so it wouldn't matter what year level you're at. When it comes to the point that you're interested in sound, level 2, level 3, level 4, you can sign up to join one of these master classes. And this is a performance master class. One of the outcomes, this is one of our students from a few years ago, Danielle Naylor, and this was performed in the street, in public, outside of the Caird Hall. So again, the performance workshop would consist of a couple of days of working with the master tutor who we bring in, and then you come up with ideas for what you might do in a performance, and then you actually perform it and record it. So here's another example at that same masterclass. And to show you some of the workshops we have a woodworking workshop specifically for contemporary art practice. That's where you might build stretchers for your paintings. It might be complex constructions in sculpture, or any kind of, even things like plinths and shelves to display your work on, and so on. And here's an example of a student that made the most of the woodworking workshop. He built a wood-burning stove, which of course is completely impossible and ironic. It couldn't function, but it's very beautifully built. And another student, an art and philosophy student, who built this pylon out of battens of wood, and he actually recorded the sound of electricity with a contact microphone against one of these pylons in the landscape, and that was played out through a speaker in the space. So it's a comment on energy production and green issues and so on. And here's another student who built his own handmade rifles, and you can see the photographs in the background. These actually worked, and again, fantastic attention to detail. So that's what some of the things you could do in the woodworking workshop. We have a ceramics space as well, and it's a very popular area actually. Although we don't have ceramics as a subject area, there are a huge number of fine art students now who are interested in producing ceramics.
It's funny, Phil, you can actually see me working away.
Oh really? Are you in that one?
I'm the one with the Nightwish jumper in the left table. Yeah, that's me.
Ah, so it is. That's good. Nice. Well pointed out. That's good, Hannah. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. And these are some of the things that were produced in the ceramics and clay workshops, including this incredibly amazing chair, which was the student's grandmother's chair. She always had sat in that all her life. So quite a complex piece of ceramics to fire that, to glaze it, to construct it modular fashion like that for her degree show. And slightly more conventional pottery on the other side. We even have a bronze foundry. I think we're the only art school in Scotland to have a bronze foundry. So if you've got a lovely thing that you want cast in bronze, bronze is not as expensive as you think. So it's something that is worth considering. So there's an example of somebody's polished bronze sculpture. We have a plaster workshop as well. So this student created these monuments of Stalin and broke the arms off and the hands off and so on. Everything was made and then broken up. Even the cart in the background was hand built in the woodworking workshop. So it's about the fall of icons. And again, this is something that was created in the woodworking workshop, and it's installed, I think, in Lumsden, the sculpture park in Aberdeenshire. And this art and philosophy student had won summer residency there, and this was the piece he created. Again, another quite complex piece using plaster to create these pods, and the pods are filled with soft nylon material and kind of cushion stuffing, and you could change the lights remotely so that you could create the kind of environment that you wanted to immerse yourself into. We have a fantastic printmaking workshop, and it covers one whole floor of the old building, the Crawford building within the art school. And here you can do lithography, etching, you You can do screen printing there, that's in a separate room. I'll come to that next. Any kind of printmaking you can imagine, and as ambitious as you would like. We have some huge screens, so you can really produce some large-scale pieces, including this very big stone lithograph. Stone lithographs are becoming quite rare now. Most people work on metal lithography plates, but this plate, once the edition has been produced, is then ground down and resurfaced again, and you can use it again. As you can see, the stone is quite thick, so you get a lot of use out of that. And here's an example of metal lithography printed onto big metal sheets, which were then in turn tortured like this. And these were the faces of homeless people in Dundee. So quite a strong political statement. We have a make space that is where you can be working with things like 3D printing and laser cutting, and also fancy electronics, computer electronics. We work with Arduino, which is a device that something else to happen. If you think of it as a switch in a sense, but it happens remotely. So, for example, there was an art and philosophy student about 5 years ago who was interested in something called brain plasticity. That is the ability of the brain to form new neural pathways. And she got this device which measured electrical activity in your brain, and that's a headset. So people would wear the headset, and then it was linked to by Arduino to a computer, which then activated something else. So the something else initially that she produced was explosions in the landscape. So by wearing the headset, by creating a level of brain activity above a certain level, it triggered an explosion in the landscape, which was quite amazing to watch. She photographed that and recorded it. But obviously she couldn't use that for her degree show because it was too dangerous. So instead she had to build a wall of LEDs, and all that did was sort of light up as your electrical activity in the brain developed. So you could go in there and just begin to think about it. Once you got used to wearing it, begin to think about it, and the wall would light up. It's quite amazing. Here's a student who used the laser facilities in the Make Lab to etch into sheets of perspex, which were then illuminated from the edge. So you get these amazing light, sort of frondy, floral images, and also it's in darkness, so you can just about see through it, and that's a student in the background. This is an art and philosophy student from about 2 or 3 years ago. Sadly, her mother died when she was in her 3rd year on the course. Her mother had had cancer, and what you can see here are the plastic protection armor that her mother would wear when she was going in for chemotherapy or radiotherapy, I think, radiotherapy, to try and get rid of the cancer. And so the student has used it as a way of invoking the figure, the actual form of her mother, and she's planted plants which then grow through the form. She's tending to it like a nurse, as you can see. So it was a performance piece, very powerful and tender statement. Look at the size of this saw this guy built. So we also have a metalworking workshop, and you can weld things. You can weld sculptures, and in this case, he's built this huge saw, two-person saw, and demonstrating how it actually works at the degree show. We also have a fantastic photography studio. It's fully equipped with lighting, and we have fantastic cameras, even a medium format digital camera, and a whole range of other cameras that students are able to borrow. You just sign up and use these and return them at an agreed time. That allows you to perhaps produce films like this on big screens. You might want to use it as a photography studio for taking portraits, as this great graduate Sekai Mckenzie did a few years ago, and again an art and philosophy student who You may know her name because she is starting to make quite big waves in the Scottish art world. And she's currently got a residency in, now where is it? I think it's at the Talbot Rice Gallery in Edinburgh. Also portraits. This student decided that her theme was going to be people with freckled faces. So obviously in Photoshop she's manipulated it slightly just to intensify the degree of difference on the skin tone so that the freckles stand out. But it's again a really powerful exhibition. And what happened? Yeah, painting. Well, yes, and we do painting, of course. There are a number of students for whom traditional painting is still a really important strand of art production. I myself am a painter and photographer. I tend to work a lot with the painting students because they want to know the old techniques. They want to know about how you begin a painting from, you know, like a menu in a recipe in a sense, where you start, what kind of ground you use, what kind of underpainting you do, and what kind of glazes you might want to use. They learn about opaque paints and transparent paints. They learn all sorts of techniques. So that is still supported. A lot of people think that that is something that has died out from art school teaching, but it's still alive in Dundee. And these actually are two of my students. On the left is a guy called James Mckenzie, and here he's just been accepted to go to Goldsmiths for his masters, and he produced these beautiful, bright, light, airy kind of abstract paintings, and with it he would do performance poetry, which was sort of kind of free-flowing, free-thinking. It was he had a loose structure to the poem, but it was really interesting, really powerful. And again, on the other side, the students' slightly more traditional kind of painting, still powerful. And here's painting which incorporates other things. So you've got a piece of copper here embedded into the painting. You've got light boxes and so on. So anything's possible. It's not just traditional painting. If we think of painting, painting can be anything. And here's more examples of how painting can be anything. We have a very lively speakers program, and that tends to happen on Wednesdays. I was going to say afternoons, but it's not just afternoons. It depends on what the visiting artists can manage. But these are some of the speakers that we have. Richard Lazell here is the person that does binding and so on. So that's again something else that students can sign up for. And we have our Cooper Gallery, which is our in-house gallery, and they show some fantastic artists, and has recently signed an agreement with the Tate, because the Tate have been so impressed by the standard of the exhibitions that we present. So there's a direct link there for artist talks and so on. Now, this slide's a bit dense, but just to point out that the University of Dundee is #2 for philosophy in Scotland, according to the Guardian's Best University Guide of 2021 and the National Student Survey of 2020. So just to speak a little bit about philosophy, Dundee is the centre for continental philosophy in Scotland. There are two distinct strands of philosophy. One is the continental philosophy, the other is the Anglo-American philosophy, which is much more to do with rationalism. So our philosophy is based on European thinkers from Plato and Aristotle, right up to more recent thinkers like Lyotard, Derrida, and Deleuze, and well, many other contemporary thinkers. The point being that in continental aesthetics or continental philosophy, We don't just ask questions that have rational answers. You see, the Anglo-American style, the notion is if it doesn't have a useful outcome, it's not worth asking the question. But that's not the case with continental philosophy. So it's much more to do with being in its full roundness. And we can talk a little bit about that afterwards, perhaps between us. Philosophy explores our existence using critical thinking and argument. We specialize in continental European philosophy and teach key texts from the European tradition. We help you look at how philosophy is important to real-world concerns and contemporary issues by exploring films and artwork, discussing important scientific and technological developments, debating controversial ethical issues, looking at how texts written 300 years ago can be relevant to political situations today. At levels 1 and 2, you'll receive a grounding in ancient and modern philosophy and be introduced to fundamental ideas concerning ethics, that is moral conduct, epistemology, which is the nature of knowledge, and metaphysics, the nature of reality. You then specialize at level 3 by drawing on a range of philosophy modules taught by philosophy lecturers engaging in research. Now that sounds heavy, but what it means is that all the staff, including our staff in the art school, we all have our own research interests, and within philosophy, the tutors there are publishing books and papers and so on, and philosophy has become quite specialised, and so the range of modules that you'll be engaging with at level 3 directly relate to the kinds of research that the philosophy tutors are engaged with at that time. So, for example, there's a new module coming on stream next academic year for level 3, which is to do with feminism and queer theory, for example. Now, that's quite an important issue that has not properly been addressed, actually, up till now, although it's something that is discussed widely in art journals and in philosophy generally and so on. So, because we have somebody engaged in that area of research, then we are able to offer that as a potential module, for example. At level 4, you write a dissertation on a theme of your choice, supported by a philosophy supervisor and an art advisor. So, at level 3, the two modules that you'd be doing, which become more specialised, at level 2, you have some core modules, one on aesthetics, one on existentialism, that all philosophy students engage with. These are important because these are kind of founding modules in a sense. You will be introduced to a whole load of thinkers at level 2, but by the time you reach level 3, you're starting to feel as though there are certain things that you're really interested in and others perhaps not quite so interested in, and that's the direction that you then take. And that would naturally lead you to your a dissertation theme of your choice at level 4, probably based on some of the things that you've discovered at level 3. You'll study existentialism in relation to contemporary culture, technology and film, and topics in aesthetics and the philosophy of art. You will also be encouraged to make links between philosophy and other subjects such as politics, literature, film, the environment, psychology, and computer science. So this is just about my last slide. That's my email address, and don't hesitate if you have any questions about the course, or any information that you need, don't hesitate to drop me an email and I'll respond as quickly as I can. Hopefully see you next year, I see. Hopefully I will. But to finish on this slide, which is quite a nice thing, on the one hand, if you just look in the dark shadow area, you think art is pointless, you have to go out and get an actual job and make a living. You can't just let the rest of your life be a joke, a failure. You will end up a starving artist, contribute to society instead of wasting time. You're worthless. Or if you read it right across, art is pointless without passion. You have to go out and create art, get an actual job, doing what you love and make a living by being yourself. You can't just let other people define the rest of your life and say you will be a joke, a failure. Follow your heart. You will end up happy and free, not a starving artist. Of your art and contribute to society by inspiring people instead of wasting time letting others tell you you're worthless. You can change the world. So I think that's quite a nice slide to finish with. A lot of people have real doubts about whether it is a worthwhile sort of pursuit, because parents worry about whether you're going to get a job and so on afterwards. Actually, a huge number of our artists thrive on leaving art school. I mentioned Sekai, but there are a number of artists that are doing so well now, and yeah, I think if it's something you love, then you should do it, I would say.